It'll be a few minutes for Sherry to join us, so hopefully we'll have plenty of time. So call the meeting to order. And Roger, do you need to do an official roll call since we're all virtual?
I will do that. Thank you. Todd Rotman.
Here.
Steve Helton.
Probably me. Heron here.
I'm sorry, Steve Heron.
No problem.
David Roush.
Here.
Tom Castellini.
Here.
Carol Mullet.
Here.
Michael Billig.
Here.
And Steve Freeland has not yet joined, and we did receive an email this morning that Carol Weber was not going to be able to join. So we do have a quorum.
All right, yep, so we recognize that we do have a quorum today. Everybody has the agenda in front of them. We have a motion to adopt the agenda.
Move to adopt the agenda.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Do we have to do a roll call, Roger, or can we just say aye and see if there's anybody that is against it?
In the other boards, we have been doing a roll call vote just to make sure that everything is clear. So I would suggest we continue to do that.
Okay.
So Steve Heron,
Aye.
David Roush,
Aye.
Tom Castellini,
Aye.
Carol Mullet,
Aye.
Michael Billig,
Aye.
Todd Rotman.
Aye. All right, moving on to the approval of the minutes. Steve did a great job getting the minutes out to everybody from the February 23rd meeting. Does anybody have any questions or corrections in regards to the agenda?
I do not.
All right, so hearing none, motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
Move to approve.
Second. Anybody want to second that motion?
Yeah, I'll
Second
second
it.
it. Mike,
Yeah,
Billig.
Carol did.
Okay.
All right. Great. Roll call.
All right, David Roush,
Aye.
Tom Castellini,
Aye.
Carol Mullet,
Aye.
Michael Billig,
Aye.
Todd Rotman,
Aye.
Steve Heron.
Aye.
Great. All right, so moving on to reports, the financial report, we have $50,000 available to us this calendar year. We have not committed any of that money yet. We do have 2 projects of interest, but that's kind of it for the financial report. Later on, when we're getting to the point of approving projects, we may want to talk about seeing if we can increase the budget for this year to cover both of the projects. A little early to talk about that because we don't have this submittal here in front of us to discuss. And so I'll wait until we get resubmittal from them. And then we know that we have 2 projects that are moving forward in order to have that discussion. Is everybody okay with that? All right.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So moving on to old business. Last month we talked about 75 North Main Street. They have requested another month before they come back to us with revised drawings. So they'll be here hopefully in the April meeting. So there's no further discussion on that unless anybody has any insider knowledge or any further discussion they want on that topic.
No, I don't.
All right. Seeing that, the next item on old business is the ZARC boundaries. If it's okay with everyone, I'd like to push that to behind new business, since we do have guests with us to discuss new business. Does anybody have an issue with moving that on the agenda?
Oh,
No.
No. So then moving on to new business, 135 South Main Street. We have a new submittal, and the architect and the owner are here to present to us today. So with that, I will hand over the project discussion to them.
Thanks, Todd. This is Dave. First order of business is I would like to officially notice my recusal from the committee for this purpose of this presentation. Assume that's okay with everybody. And then is Sherry on?
I'm here,
Okay, good. Hey, good morning.
finally.
No days complete without technology challenges. So if it's all right, I think unless Sherry, do you want to offer anything to the start, or do you want me just to jump in? And then I will share my screen here in a second.
All right, I say you jump right in.
Okay.
I have a dog.
So let me see if I'm smart enough to do this. Do I have screen sharing privileges, Roger? Can people see my screen?
Yes.
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 Okay, super. All right, I'm going to get rid of these. Sorry, I'm going to get rid of your pictures. Not that I don't like seeing you all. It's easier to do this without. Okay. So let me just jump in. The project, and I'm going to assume most of you have at least at a high level familiarized yourself with what we're doing. But this is the former Serenity building, 135 Main Street, just north of the Brick Street Inn. And Sherry has a third brand for the village. This is called Tipsy Mermaid, and it will be a bar-centric, we believe 2-meal-a-day restaurant, and basically involves what we would call reinvigorating and repurposing the existing structure and making some minor additions to provide better indoor-outdoor continuity and a little bit more vibe and verve. So that's kind of the high-level description. And I'll just jump into the plans. And as it relates to the application, order of magnitude, we're looking at between $300,000 and $400,000 investment in the property, about 100 of which is associated with we believe the renovation of the existing building, and the grant at 40% of that number is conceptually at a request of about $38,000. So I'll just high level from a schedule standpoint, we are actively in design right now. The project has been filed for development plan approval and will be heard, and with all good hope, it will be approved in middle of April. The project will then immediately go into permitting and construction, and the plan is for it to be open toward the third quarter of this year. So we are literally in the throes. So, and we recognize this is the first look into the project for the committee, but our hope would be to move as quickly as possible to detailed discussion and ultimately approval. So I'm going to jump back over the estimate. As we talked about a high level, these are budgets based on scope as we see it at this point. We do have a contractor who is at our hip and is pricing concurrently with this, so we'll have firmer prices as we get down the road here. Jump to the simplest drawings. So again, the existing building, 135, this is Main Street here. We have a few parking lot spaces in the back, and we have a relatively large, somewhat underutilized outdoor space here to the south. The Brick Street Inn here is at this edge. The building you're all familiar with. I don't think I'll go into any detail, but you're welcome to ask questions. This is the south side, so we're taking off this ramp, and then we're basically wrapping the porch around to create this four-season room on the south side, which will house the bar and open up into the patio. And then on the east side, there is a couple of additions that are, fairly simple. There's the existing kitchen, which is a very modest kitchen, is located in this space. And what we're going to be doing is tearing this piece off, hopefully before it falls off, and building a little bit more substantial addition, which will follow the shape of this roof line here out to the east, largely occupying the same footprint. The west elevation then on Main Street remains pretty much intact, and you'll see in the renderings here in a second, you'll see some of the cleanup and accessorizing of that elevation as we get into it. Just to give you a kind of a high level overview. So the existing plan that you see here, this is the porch, this is Main Street. The dining room, I don't know how many of you have actually been in the space or eaten there, but about a 50-seat dining room here, and then the kitchen space in the back. And you can get a sense here of our proposed demolition, both on this little addition and then opening up here to the south. And then our proposed plan builds the new addition to the east for an expanded kitchen, repurposes the dining room, brings the kitchen forward a little bit, stretch our dining room across the Main Street side, and then the four-season room here to the south with a wraparound bar that then opens up into these glassed window areas. And then we continue to use the patio, what's left of it, for outdoor dining. Roof plan. So again, we're taking the existing porch and then effectively wrapping that roof line around. So we have basically a covered porch on the south side. Some basic elevations. So the shingle roof, let me go, yes. So stay here. The shingle roof stays. There are some repairs. There's some shingles that have slid off and so forth. There's dark bronze gutters and downspouts, which will be replaced because we're going to change the color scheme. At this point, the siding is designated to remain and be replaced. The windows will remain and be painted out. We've got the proposal to add some shutters that's kind of new to the game, and I'll show you that here in a second. The porch roof, we believe, will all get replaced as we add on to it. And at this point, we're showing shingle roofs and then new gutters and downspouts along the eave line. The existing limestone railing that you see here and posts will stay. It will be cleaned. The windows will be cleaned up and painted. And we're going to bring the stoop out forward. There's an existing wrought iron railing that will remain at the sidewalk line. The plan right now is to open that railing on the extreme north side, which will allow us to create a sloped walkway that will come in and up to the extended porch or stoop, and allow us to eliminate the very not very pleasant wood ramp that's on the south side. So south elevation, again, same scope. Looks like we're missing a gable, I think, here. Same scope as the north. This is the existing addition, which will be cleaned up, repairs made to the roof and the windows and so forth. And then this is our new addition here to the south. And then the east elevation, we have a little more development of this. It may take me a second to find that, but this again represents the former structure back here in our addition. And our addition, this would be the footprint of the addition out here to the side. So, so let me, if I get the right drawing, there we go. So this will maybe give you a little bit better idea. So this would be a view from Main Street. See if I can zoom in on it a little bit. The brand of the restaurant is a Key West menu, and sort of that active, informal, somewhat eclectic vibe, I believe. And the idea is to create a good bit of exuberance here. So what you'll see here, and please don't take the colors literally, is a suggestion of a painted body of the building with a muted gray. This is probably a little more brown than I think we will ultimately propose, and a bright white trim treatment. That roof stays, the new roof along here. Adding, the proposal would be to add sort of some decorative shutters on at least these two windows, lights, and a little sculptural element up here in the gable, a weather vane on the south side. And then the Four Season room here, again, this is all the limestone porch and so forth. The fence railing stays. And then the Four Season room would include these operable windows and some panels below, and more modern columns, and include some posts along the south fence line and festoon lighting that defines the outdoor space here to the south. Just, a couple character images here of porch, brighter finishes, lighter, more action there. And then again, some simple, these are just sort of theme shots that make the translation. Obviously, we're not trying to place a Key West structure in the middle of Zionsville, but the simplicity of the building forms and the kind of the street life, we think there's a pretty nice translation there. So that's kind of the project at a high level. I think I will just kind of pause here and let folks sort of ask questions, or we can get into the details here. So if anybody's still awake, does anybody want to have any questions, or we can get into the costs if you'd like, which would be a little bit more specific on the project scope. And certainly I'll defer to the favor of the committee on how we want this to proceed from this point forward.
I don't have any real questions at this time, other than I think it's going to be a fabulous addition to the village.
Yep, I would echo Tom's comment, and I guess my only question would be the rear demo and replacement. Is that part of the request? Are you hoping to find a way to make that part of the request as a rehabilitation, or is that new construction that's outside the request?
At this point, all new construction is outside of the request in accordance with the committee rules. Having some history with the committee, I can basically summarize as follows. The committee has the ability to speak into additions and new construction as part of its rules, but does not provide direct funding for new construction. There's been discussion in the past about whether or not this program would want to allow for that, and basically we felt like it was going to be the floodgates might open, and obviously new construction can become very expensive and extensive. So the way this ask is developed is the work that's in the estimate and in the scope is only associated with work on the existing building, some of which might ready the building for the addition, but no costs for the addition are included in the ask.
Well, I guess at this time, the presentation is so well done. We have no questions. Let's move forward. Right, Chad.
Yeah, I'd say, with the application being for the work to the existing building and the fact that you aren't radically changing it, you're just repurposing it and making sure that it's ready for its new use.
You're fading out, Todd. We can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me now?
Oh, we can now.
You're just fading in and out. I think you have to be real close to your computer. That's the advice I get.
So while you were fading out,
So, okay, you guys hear me now?
no, it's too close, but you were looking more like an auctioneer.
All right, yeah, let me know if I fade in and out, because if I do, I can remove this microphone and go back to the computer microphone. That's the issue. Is I never know which one's gonna actually work
You
today.
might as well just go back to the computer microphone.
How about now? Okay, so far?
Good so far.
Yeah, so since the work is, I think, at least my opinion is, there's not a lot of questions, because what the funding is for is work to the existing building, and it's just kind of enhancing it. There's not really any design decisions, I guess, to review. My only comment would be, before approval, as you know, we're going to need to see the color palette of everything, and any light fixtures, et cetera, so that we can approve all of the details that are going to go into it.
So it sounds as if it's a perfect facade enhancement brought to us.
Correct. And then since we do get to weigh in on the design of the new portion, I think the new portion is respectful of what's there, doesn't detract from it. It does read a little bit differently, which allows you to understand that it is an addition, which I think is good, that you can differentiate between the original and the new as well. I think they complement each other well. I think the new use for the property, including the open space, is great. Very appropriate. It'll be a great benefit to the village. So yeah, any concerns or questions on the new addition?
Now, as the photograph, the view from Main Street that's up now, is the entire outdoor patio going to be bricked?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I glossed over a little detail, and that is the large tree that's in that courtyard will come down as part of this. So those members that might have dual citizenship with the Pizzazz group, we'd like to probably just make sure that you're okay with that. But yeah, so the tree, and we've actually had an arborist look at the tree. The tree has in fact already started with the brick demolition. If you've walked in there, it's pushed about a third of the bricks up and around and so forth. And the tree is a very sort of dirty tree for a dining environment. So the difficult decision was made that we should bring it down. We didn't think we could work around it anyway. Our arborist tells us it's about 75 years into a 100-year lifespan in this setting. Although if the tree were setting out in the middle of a field somewhere, it would probably have a longer lifespan, but it's clearly stressed and so forth. So to that end, because of the damage that the tree has done and the construction work and just the removal of its residue, we're anticipating all the bricks are going to be picked up and put back down. There might be some, respacing or, some detailing and so forth, but the plan is to basically replace the patio that's there now.
And as a dual citizen on the Pizzazz committee, that tree is on private property and we have no say.
With the brickwork being discussed, that was a great point to bring up. I'm curious, can we as the committee of the facade program, since we've talked so much about landscape or dumpster enclosures and how they affect the use of the facades, are we able to play a part in the approval or granting funds for the rehabilitation of a patio like that when it comes to brickwork?
Being
You know-
recused, I won't answer that.
I was gonna say, maybe that's a, can we bring Dave back in to talk with Todd about that, or how does that work? I get more of a curiosity than anything.
Wayne, if you're still on the call, if you could clarify our ability to weigh in on patio work.
I'm sorry, Wayne has had to step away from the meeting. But I can tell you from the staff standpoint that if you would have suggestions that are maybe outside of your area of review, you can still make those suggestions, and staff can relay those to the Plan Commission for their consideration during the development plan review of the project. I'll also add for the committee's information, as David noted, this project has been submitted for development plan review and approval by the Plan Commission. The Technical Advisory Committee has already had a chance to review the project, and Todd, as you suggested or mentioned, there would need to be some additional information provided regarding colors and lighting fixtures, things like that. Those are similar comments that TAC presented to the petitioner as well. So we're all seeking the same information, and I trust that David and his team are working on that. But again, if going back to the question specific, if there are some comments that you would like relayed to the Plan Commission for consideration, there is an avenue to do that, and we could include those within the staff report to the Plan Commission.
I think that we may have some history, Steve, within that this can fall within the scope. We could use Lions Club, for example. You know, with their rehab, we did invest in some concrete work, and sidewalking and handicap ramping and things like that were part of the project. So we do have our toe in the water on that issue, where in the past we have included that in a project. But that's minor compared to everything else we got going on this, I think.
Right. And as part of this application, they are including the stoop and step, the walk and railings, things leading up to the front porch, which I personally feel are integral to the building and the reuse of the building, and part of the entire project. So I feel like that's appropriate to cover that as part of this.
Yeah, I feel comfortable with that since we have a history with it. And so at this point, in a preliminary right now, we aren't, fixtures haven't been chosen, or lighting fixtures, or you mentioned you have colors, but not ready for any of that.
Unfortunately, I don't have that in front of us today, but it's a priority, and my plan would be that we'll have it, by next week, I'm sure. As Roger mentioned, some of that has been asked for by the Plan Commission, as we would expect. We just had a meeting last week and kind of went through the color palette a little bit. So I don't have any problem, committing to following up with obviously two things. One would be, that we would agree with the committee as the committee has done on some past applications, that we would arrive at a mutually agreeable, palette of materials and so forth. But I do expect that we'll have all those fixtures selected by this time next week.
Well, at this point in your presentation, I have no further questions. I feel your presentation has been right on, and obviously we're not flooded with questions now once we get into the details.
Yeah, I would just request, as part of the details, since the new addition is part of the project, even though we don't have say in that, I would like to know material specs, siding specs, make sure we got smooth siding. So make sure to include the details as well.
Will do.
I'd just like to add too that even though prior to living in Zionsville, I would have to say that type of cement block porch pattern was not particularly familiar to me. I think because it does have a history in Zionsville, I think it's really neat that you're keeping that. And I think that will enhance the fact that you're repurposing a building that does have some history in town. So I'm glad to see that along with the iron railing. And I do like the way the new porch addition looks. It looks, as you said, cheerful and pleasant and a place where you enjoy going.
So on behalf of Sherry, the second drink is always the better one than the first drink. So we're trying to provide a place that is conducive to that.
And within all this, Sherry, I'd like to say that you have really contributed greatly to the village, and we greatly appreciate your creativity and the revenue that you bring to other businesses in the village.
Thank you. It's fun. That's the good part.
Yeah, but you're very good at creating fun.
Well, thank you.
I think to piggyback on that, we appreciate your commitment to the village and to, as you grow and come up with new concepts, to continue to look for places in the village to do it. That just really so important, and focus on the village. I guess my question to the applicant would be, is the applicant wanting to come back next month for a final approval, giving us information prior to that so we're prepared, or is the applicant wanting us to review the information between the meetings and looking for some sort of approval prior to that next meeting?
That's a great question. I think that what I would like to say is, if there is I'm looking at schedules here just a second.
While you're looking at schedules, Dave, I'd like to suggest too that, and Todd, and what we've done in the past, to assign a couple of people from the committee onto this project. So between now and next meeting, if they have questions that if it comes up and we need to have a meeting with them before our next meeting, that we can. So we want to assign a couple people to be on this project.
Yeah, so the next meeting is, my calendar's not cooperating here. There we go. I guess it's probably it'd be April
27th.
27th. Okay, thanks, Roger. Could have just asked you, huh? So I think what I would like to ask is this: if there are any major points of consternation or question, I certainly understand the color palette and fixtures and adding that detail. We'd like to hear that today. My thought would be that we would provide a supplemental package, let's say within the next 2 weeks, and provide that to the committee, and then we can work during that time with whoever the committee might appoint as their designated representatives to kind of vet that, with the hope and goal that we would then garner the approval or the agreement on whatever the next meeting is, April 27th. So we can obviously fill in the blanks that need to be filled in today. Gives the committee a couple of weeks to ask questions or to validate the additional information we're going to give. So that would be my proposal.
All right, so Tom and I have been pretty involved in the last several projects. I want to give an opportunity to anybody else who has an interest in being a committee representative on this project. So at this time, I'll ask if anybody specifically wants to be a representative from the committee to work with the applicant over the next several weeks. I'd be looking for 2 people.
We're going to be gone during part of that time, as probably the rest of Zionsville will be, I think. I heard that we're closed, the town is closed between April 2nd and 9th or something like that. But
I was
anyway.
actually going to mention, yeah, I'll be gone for a week next week as well. So I feel bad trying to jump in on that.
Well, I
All right,
guarantee you all plumbers are gone, so.
If it would be more easy, I can tell you I'll be in Key West part of that time. So if you want to meet down there, we could do that.
No, that's not a bad idea. Yeah. And that's, is that for
Sounds like
this
a great idea,
project
David.
research? Yeah.
Probably.
All right, don't everyone jump on board wanting to be a part of the project.
I'm in. Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel like I need to do some research down in Key West as well to make sure. So,
Yeah. If you haven't taken the party barge from Fort Myers, then you got to start there.
all right. So hearing nobody jump on board, I'll volunteer to be one of the members to look at it.
I will as well, again, because my grandchildren aren't ready to go on spring break yet.
I don't have the luxury of being able to go on spring break this year either. So, all right. So Tom and Todd will be the representatives to review items over the next several weeks with the applicant.
Thanks, fellas.
Yep. Anything else in regards to this project before we move on?
Can I ask one question? And Dave may actually know the answer. When it comes to the color palette exterior, you want specifics, the SW 1626 dockside blue, correct? Like not, it's gonna be blue. You want
Correct.
specifics? Okay.
Yeah. And what I would offer, again, subject to the discretion of the committee, is we would identify all those specific colors at this point in time and where they go. And then there's always a validating decision with mock-ups, and on-site once, because what it looks like on a paint chip and what it looks like on the wall can sometimes deviate. So unless the committee would feel otherwise, there would probably be a little paint review meeting on site once the work is underway, if there needs to be a tweak.
Oh, yeah.
Agree. The color we had for Salty, if anybody remembers the first day we painted it blue, it ended up being purple. So it is true. It definitely, that's the part that makes me a little nervous. I want a little flexibility in case it doesn't look what it's supposed to look like.
Right.
And I would just say too, that when you get to that point, I'd be more than happy to come down and review that as well. That's probably my favorite part of doing projects. So, and have done that on others. So I'm very willing to do that.
Okay, wonderful.
And you're right. There's no color that looks like you expect it will look.
Not on that large of a side, yes. Okay.
Because it's all about light. It's all about what plane it is. If you look at a color sample lying flat on your desk and you hold it up against the wall, there are 2 different colors because of light and because of what is reflected around it. So yes, and it can be very subjective, of course, too. 2 people can stand there and one says it's purple and one says it's blue.
Okay. Well, that answered my question. Thank you.
Great. Well, we appreciate it very much, guys. Thank you for your presentation. We look forward to getting more information.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's good. Thanks.
It's very exciting.
It is. We just need a zip line from our window.
Dave and I were trying to figure out how to get his cocktails to his window.
Do you remember Stout's shoes downtown, with the rope coming from the mezzanine? I think the Plan Commission would approve that. Great, thank you all. We'll, the ball's in our court, hearing that there is general favor and just looking for some additional detail. We'll move forward accordingly.
All right. And then David, if you could hit stop sharing on the screen.
I don't know. I'm having fun here. It's actually working. Did I stop?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
All right, and then, so moving on to the deferred item of business, which was the ZARC boundaries. I see David Roush rejoining the meeting, unrecusing himself. He put together a real nice outline of a proposed boundary expansion, as well as description of how the boundary is defined and how we potentially could define the boundary. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at that. David, if you want to give your thoughts on the preparation of this.
Sure. Thank you, Todd. And as mentioned, this is a draft for discussion. I think there's a couple things that obviously, if and when we publish this, we'll want to clean up just a bit. But hang on a second. I'm trying to see what I sent you. But basically, it's this. After 13 months of laborious work and analysis, which is when this started. So the salmon colored, obviously, space is the existing boundary. And then this, in part, was precipitated by the exploration of the former Hooks Drugs property down on the south end of town as far as an expansion. So the red dots are just a high level point of commercial or non-residential uses that would kind of start to fall outside of our current boundary if and when we are willing to enlarge it. So hang on a second. So the existing definition.
Can you share your screen again, David?
I sure can. Yeah, I'm actually looking at my my screen so I'm kind of jumping back and forth. So let me make sure I get those controls back.
David, while you're doing that, within our existing boundaries to the west, is that first, where does it extend to the west in our existing boundaries? What street is that?
It includes the properties between First and Second, but does not go across Second Street.
Okay.
So I'm trying to decide if I'm smart enough to share my screen again, and there we go. Hang on a second. Okay. Back?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a subtlety in the definition aside from the geography, and the definition is this. So the existing boundary is defined as all commercial use properties in or immediately adjacent to the VBD zoning district. So the key there is commercial use. And so as an example, one of our early applicants, I think the second or third, I think they were the third, was Claghorn Custom Flooring. And that was actually a residential zone property outside of VBD, but it was in a non-conforming commercial use. So they actually, because they were contiguous, fit within the category. On the flip side, Sullivan Muntz approached us a number of years ago, and we, for a variety of reasons, they were not entertained as an applicant, in part because they were not in that case, a commercial use. They were a not-for-profit use. And I think there was something else I don't remember now exactly. But, fast forward, obviously, the Lions Club is a very similar not-for-profit use. There's a lot of upside and benefit to supporting, those local partners. And so the new definition, aside from the boundaries, is, and it probably needs to be wordsmithed a little bit, but basically is to say all non-single family residential use property properties in areas indicated contiguous with all commercial zoning districts in or adjacent to the VBD zoning district. So the key there is continuity of the VBD or the other B uses. Right now, we're limited to the the VBD only. So the point to this is that we're basically going to say, and this is obviously subject to discussion and whatever the committee and then the town decides is best, but it basically says, if you have a non-single family residential use, so multifamily residential, not-for-profit, all of those uses would fall within the category. As long as they are within basically this boundary area, then they would become eligible for participation in our program. Just to, and to highlight, so the red dots are just properties that, may or may not fall into that at some point. So this is the former Hook's Drugs, now Hotel Tango, Taylor Oil, Bob Harris's properties, Jim Boyle's home is here, and it's in the boundary, but it's not a commercial use. If that would ever change, obviously, then a commercial use, Bub's, the B shops down at or South Village shops here, the couple of the very dilapidated homes on the Hanson property here, Sullivan Muntz, the Bell switching station, to name a few. So that's, I just thought it would be edifying to just identify the properties that might, kind of fall into this expanded boundary, not with no agenda, good or bad. It's just clarity for the moment. So that would be the proposal. This is not 100% scientific, but just obviously getting something out there for us to decide on.
I'd say there's two things I think that we need to approve kind of separately. One would be the new definition, and then number two would be the graphic itself and the boundaries. So if we can start with the definition first, I like the more specific language about non-single family residential use, so that we don't get into arguments about, is retail different than commercial, for profit, et cetera. It's easier to exclude uses. I might propose that instead of single family, it would be 1 and 2 family residential use, so that a duplex wouldn't qualify either.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then the line in here that says in areas indicated would clearly define a boundary, where before it was just language that's had the last part which said contiguous with, et cetera, et cetera. So are we trying to define the edge or leave the language open to, here's the graphic, but if there's something else that's commercial adjacent to it, we would consider it?
So that's a good question, and my line of thinking went this way. Anybody that's in the planning staff will know that words will get parsed. Can get parsed at times. And so what I think there's a potential for a weak link down here relative to whether you jump across Main Street and when you jump across Eagle Creek. So I kind of slathered over both of them and said, well, here's the picture and here's the words. So it's probably not as clear as it might want to be. I think the way it reads right now, it is there's a picture, there's actually a graphic, and we've never been called on it, I don't believe, but there is a graphic in the program. But I think it's very clear that we have, you're either touching the VBD or you're not. When we expand down here, it's arguable, I suppose it's arguable whether we're actually touching each other because I believe this right now is actually, the Boyles property is actually still zoned residential. This is VBD, this is B1 or 2, I don't remember. And I don't know what Taylor's is. So what I was trying to basically say is, in the unlikely event that somebody felt this wasn't contiguous, we would default to the map itself. So quite frankly, if we wanted to, we could, I suppose, I'd probably defer to Roger and Wayne and others on this, is eliminate the reference to the zoning districts altogether, and then just go back and rely on the map itself.
That, excuse me, I think as the development of the gateway into the village starts to come online, part of that is to bring South Main Street closer to North Main Street. So it would be visually starting to be more contiguous as a flow to the business, the village business district flowing to the south. But I do agree that if we keep it just as a boundary, we get away from the zoning things.
Yeah. Well, it just occurred to me as you were talking, Tom, I believe since the program was formed, the Hanson property has been rezoned. So arguably our boundary expanded without us even really, paying attention to it, as when the property was rezoned a couple of years ago. So I probably should adjust that. So I think now, having kind of gone back into this exercise after 13 months of constant back and forth and heavy lifting, it probably makes sense just to defer to the map itself. I'd still stay with the description of the non, and I can wordsmith that a little bit. I agree with what you're saying, Todd, about the 1 and 2 family, but wordsmith that, but just stop and defer to the map. As long as the map is clear, which it should be, on where it actually stops. To your point, Tom, like on 2nd Street, if the switching station wanted to come in and do something, our map will clearly delineate that we're going to come down in this graphic. Probably needs to be a little crisper, but would actually come down. I think there's an alley here, and so it'll be black and white that, you can't come over that line.
So a couple of things, since we're discussing the definition, it says properties in the area, but a property, since these are pretty big, it may have multiple buildings, and one of the buildings may still be residential. So I wonder if, the definition would say all non-1 and 2 family buildings in the areas indicated, so that property wouldn't be part of that. And John Towsley has several comments I just want to bring up. The first question was, do the boundaries include residentially zoned properties? And the answer to that is yes, the boundary does include that. And I think the thought would be that zoning does change. And so if something is a residentially zoned property and there's a residence on it, obviously it wouldn't qualify because it wouldn't be a 1 and 2 family project. It would be probably a single family project. Then how about defining coverage by zoning classifications? That kind of piggybacks on what I just said, that zoning continues to change. And so I'd be a little concerned about trying to define it by zoning, because then somebody could change the zoning, try to get in or out of it. So I do like the boundary idea. And then the third comment was suggesting further discussion with the Village Residents Association and Historic Preservation Committee input next month. And I think that's a really great idea, that representatives from those groups can participate, as this is a village initiative, and all interested parties, I think it'd be okay for them to have a say in it and give their input, as the more ideas we have, I think, to consider, the better. Is everybody in agreement with that? Is that acceptable to further this discussion next week with other members of the community?
Just for the record, you're referring to next month, or what do you mean?
Next
when you say
month. Oh,
Okay,
I'm
And-
sorry. I probably said next week, didn't I?
that's okay. And you said
And next
Village
month.
Residents Association and who else?
The Historic Preservation Committee.
Great.
Sounds
I'm
good.
not opposed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just
And-
excited
I
that
think that's
David is
good.
pushing us forward. We've been talking about it for about 18 months, so it's good. Thanks, David.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's just been an average 18 months. So, yeah, I think to put a little bit finer point, I think there's nothing secretive here. So to the degree that, others are interested, I don't think that's ever a bad thing. I do think it's important that people understand before they get into this, that this is not a statutory and legislative program, and that it is in fact an incentive program that is entirely voluntary. And people, we and other communities and even the national programs do fight that. And I would want to make sure that there would be proper education going into that, so that people didn't immediately translate this into being some sort of a statutory, punitive kind of thing. And I say that because I've for many, many years dealt with this, not only here, but also when you get into, tax credit projects and so forth. So my caveat to that would be to make, if we're going to do that there ought to be some sort of a preamble that is shared, so that at a high level, so that everybody that it might be interested walks into the room without, with clarity that this is purely an incentive program and voluntary. So that'd be comment number one. And I don't think I can understate that, given some of the significant interest that's been, around the town for many years, quite frankly. And it's good. I think it's awesome. At the same time, I think that being efficient with the conversation would be a missed opportunity if people interpreted it to be different. And maybe I'm imagining something that doesn't exist, and I'd be fine that isn't the case. But I know anytime you start talking about programs like this, people immediately, there is a concern, and we faced it as a committee a few times, where people don't want to follow the rules. And why are you making me follow the rules? Well, we're not making anybody do anything. We are incenting them to do things that we think add value to the integrity of the architecture and of the community itself. And the other piece to this is that when this program was formed, there was and continues to be very deliberate downplay of historic character. While that is an important part of the integrity of our community and the program, unfortunately, even though it could be, Zionsville still does not have itself, as for instance, a designated historic district for a variety of reasons. And I think that the understated nature of the 20th century functional architecture, while in itself is good, is not necessarily high style. And there is a lot of romance and integrity to what we have. But the point to this program has always been to, make sure that the buildings are enhanced and are repositioned for, a long-term durability, as well as, continued sort of contribution to the community as a whole. So that's a whole bunch of words, but summarized to say we should make sure that any larger conversation is led with a very basic understanding that this is an incentive program, not an historic preservation requirement. So that's comment one. Comment two is we should be advised that there are currently existing single-family homes within these areas, including the former boundary, and that if and when those properties would turn over to be a commercial use for some reason, a change of use within the district or a change of zoning, that those properties then would in fact become eligible for the program. I do not think that's a bad thing at all, but I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that, so that if the home on Taylor Oil properties or the rentals at Sullivan Munts or whatever it might be, if those properties turn over into a commercial use, they will in fact become eligible for the program. Again, I think that's a positive, but just to make sure that's not left unsaid.
I agree that that coming to the table with a clarification of what we do is very important. Yeah. It's voluntary. You want our money?
Right.
Yeah. No.
Right. Yep.
And we have so many examples of that on Main Street now. We can take Scoops, for example. Scoops is in the building that's to the south of Scoops that were at one point residentials, and now Scoop is now a viable retail spot in the village.
Right.
And the Tipsy Mermaid, and we can go up and down the street and see how we have adapted with that.
Right.
So in regards to the boundaries that we're looking at on the map today, does anybody have any concerns or desire for changes to that proposed?
I personally don't. I think the south end of that boundary is perfect. Once you get past that, there's really not much. And anything within that boundary as you cross 106th Street is all going to be new construction to start with. I think the biggest incentive of doing this is it gives us an opportunity to have the Harris property, which is kind of a gateway property coming in off of 106th Street and turning into the village. If they so choose that they want to do something that opens up the ZARC committee to help them do some facade enhancement, which would also help with the entrance, a visual entrance into the village. So it does present an opportunity in that particular space at this time if we extended the boundaries.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Any other comments on the proposed?
My only comment would be to, just like you've done here, just make sure that whenever we post this or call this thing official and tie it to the definition, if you will, then we want to make sure the date is accurate and it's called out in the definition. Because if that ever changes, we'll want to make sure it's tied to the right map. And then I guess my only other thought is, can we throw some street names or boundary names? So when you're looking at this map, if you aren't familiar with staring at the village like this, or if you aren't familiar with this map, do you know that that's 2nd Street or 3rd Street or Main Street? Where are you? Where are those lines defined? Could we maybe put some miniature guide marks on there to make sure that it's clear where these lines are drawn?
Well, I think with another 14 months or so, we can probably enhance the map a little
About
bit.
what I was figuring. Yeah, maybe another year or so. Yeah.
Once the drone technology is a little further along, I think we can get a pretty solid photo.
Yeah. Right. Crystal lines up. Yeah. Make it prettier. I mean, I know you could, I know you have the time for all that. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. The map that's currently in our rules is fairly, I don't want to say vague. It's a little hard to read or work with, but if we're going to rely on the map and not the words, which I agree with, then the map should should be crystal clear. So, and I might ultimately ask Roger if there's a maybe a good quality graphic from the town zoning map, maybe, or something that we might use as an underlay. Just, I don't remember where this particular graphic came from. It's been a while, but that would be good to have. Actually, it'd probably be good to have that excerpt from the zoning map, but I think what I find online is not reproducible.
Yeah. Yeah, my request, Roger, would be that the town actually creates this graphic and doesn't fall upon committee members to create it, since it will exist far beyond those who are on the committee right now. And hopefully that would be acceptable, that the town could take that responsibility.
Todd, you faded out there at the end, but I believe I understood the gist of what you were saying. I agree. I will do some digging here to find a map that is clearer and can be reproducible. And we should be able to accomplish that in less than the 14 months that David referenced. But I agree. We will turn some stones and see what I can find for a better map to use as a base.
And then there's a further chat from John Townsley in regards to 2nd Street traditionally being the boundary between commercial and residential, and some previous remonstrances related to that. So I think that next month when we discuss that, we can get the input from the members from those two groups that will be joining us as to their thoughts on that. I think that'll be a very good discussion to have to understand the concern of the residences in that area, and whether or not the boundary, should expand across 2nd Street or not. So I appreciate you bringing that up, John. And I think that'll be a very good topic to discuss next month and get everybody's feedback on that. I think to kind of piggyback onto what David was saying, if there could be several, maybe 2 members from each group that kind of have a consensus of thoughts from those groups to keep the conversation very efficient next month, that would be very appreciated. Any further discussion today on this topic?
Not from me.
Not on this topic. I have one bookkeeping or note keeping item, and that is, I'm sorry, I don't know John Towsley or Mark Zalonis who were on the phone call. I was curious if I can note that more accurately in the minutes. Are you visitors? Are you associated with any applicants?
They are visitors.
Great. Much easier in person to find that out than it is on Zoom, so thank you.
Yeah, and they are tied into the 2 groups that we mentioned discussing boundaries with next.
Wonderful.
As well, but they're also residents.
Thank you.
All right, so with that, the next meeting will be April the 27th at 8 a.m. Virtual or in person to be. John Towsley just correctly said they are members of the VRA and Historic Preservation Commission. So for the record, they are members of VRA and Historic Preservation Commission. It'll be determined whether or not it's going to be a virtual, in-person, or a combination of both. Too early to tell at this time, but it will be part of the public notice as to how the meeting will be convened. And with that, I look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Moved.
Second.
All right. Roger, you want to do a roll call on the adjournment?
For this, I believe we could probably do just a voice vote.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
I
Any,
I,
any opposed? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
thank
Todd.
you all.
Take care. Be safe.
ciao, everyone. Dave, get this off my screen. No.